Coming at you live from New York, this is Spirit Matters, your daily Bhakti Center podcast. And we are so glad you're here. My name is Dal Grunga, and I'm wonderfully joined by my co-host, Achyuta Gopi. Our tri-host, Kishore Chandra, is not with us today. He's getting ready to fly to Ecuador. So he's packing up and getting ready for that. So it's just us, along with our live Zoom studio audience and all of you listening out there in podcast land. Thank you for being here. This is your daily spiritual check-in, and we're glad you're here. How are you, Achyuta?
Sheltered, as usual.
Sheltered as usual. That's wonderful. Beautiful. I'm doing all right. I'm still getting over this congestion. I've had like congestion for like a week or so. Can you hear it, my voice?
I think it's a like winter allergies are now a thing, man.
They're a thing. It's done. We're here. It's
For me,
winter. Yeah.
lots
I
of people don't
find
know about them. Winter allergies.
winter allergies. They're here. They're a thing. And we're in winter now. It's December. In case you missed it. In case you missed it, we've started December now. And so anyways, we've been having some good conversations. I wrote down things yesterday that I wanted to follow up on because we've been reading the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Third chapter of Bhagavad Gita is entitled Karma Yoga, the yoga of action. And Arjuna is having this confusion about, wait a minute, I thought spiritual life was a path of removing myself from the situation. I thought spiritual life was a path of turning everything off. I thought spiritual path was a way of turning in the other direction, and leaving things behind. Um, and Krishna seems to be encouraging me to do just the opposite, to run towards the mess, to engage, to get in, roll up my sleeves and get involved. And it seems quite confusing to me. So he's asking for this clarity. And Krishna's explaining that you can never not roll up your sleeves. You can never not be involved because no matter where you go, there you are. And the soul is eternally active. And in addition to that, we've all been given a nature in this world that, and this is where we will invoke Kishore, behooves us um, to integrate into who we are and what we do. And you can never run away from it. And so they get these beautiful verses by not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction, nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection. Everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the qualities they've acquired from the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even from a moment. And then I don't know if we read this verse 6 yesterday, but you were alluding to this idea, Achyuta, verse 6, one who restrains the senses of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. So you might externally, as Achyuta would say, like, I'm over it, or it doesn't bother me, or I forgave, or I don't want that anymore, whatever. And you're like gritting your teeth externally and removing yourself from somewhere, but your mind is still totally absorbed there. And you're still having those imaginary conversations and you're still fantasizing about X, Y, or Z, or you're still like reeling inside from a sense of upset. You're internally obsessing over something, even though you've externally removed yourself there. And so Krishna's talking about, I don't want you to live that way. And there's a way to manage that healthily, 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 health is a way to manage that healthily. Is that like a pushing
In
the
a
envelope
healthy way.
in a healthy way? You know, I want to use more words. And so we had a beautiful conversation yesterday, and I wrote some follow-up stuff because we were getting a good conversation, and that's where we left off. Is that accurate, Achyuta? Did I miss anything? Did I misrepresent anything? Is there anything that you wanted to add? Thought I
uh,
played safe with that word.
no. It was definitely good, and I think we got all the way to 8.
Oh, we did. We got all the way to 8.
Yeah, because Kishore read 6, 7, and 8 all together.
You have been so wrong about me so many
Someone's not muted.
I'm gonna
Just
have you
FYI.
and Brian.
There we go. I don't know who that was, but we're all muted. Okay. So we I read verse 6. One who restrains the senses of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself, is called a pretender. 7. On the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga, that's our title of the chapter, in Krishna consciousness, without attachment, they're by far superior. Performed your prescribed duty. And this word prescribed duty in this verse is known as karma, your work. Perform your prescribed work in this life. For doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work. Prabhupada mentions really beautifully in the purport of this verse. And did we read any of the purport of this yesterday?
We might have gotten to a little bit of it. We went a little bit into some of the purports.
This purport, just the beginning. There are
Yeah.
many pseudo meditators who misrepresent themselves as belonging to high parentage and great professional men who falsely pose that they have sacrificed everything for the sake of advancement in spiritual life. But Sri Krishna did not want Arjuna to become a pretender. Rather, the Lord desired that Arjuna perform his prescribed duties as set forth for Kshatriyas. So Krishna, I love you brought up this word yesterday, Chuta, and this word has already been used by Krishna in the Gita as not being a pretender, not trying to be something that I'm not. And so there was a couple really great points yesterday and some follow-ups that I wrote down to get into. And before I rattle them off, is there anything you wanted to?
Yeah.
I've been talking a lot. Whenever I have I have an app on my phone. I don't know if any of you have seen this app, but it's an app that tracks how much I've been talking, and it sends me an electrical shock whenever I speak too much and reminds me stop talking and see if anybody else has something to say.
Do you actually have that?
It's a mental app.
It's like, is it? The tabs are always open.
The tabs are always open. It's like stop talking and see if someone else has something to say.
um, yeah, this word of being a pretender, and I really love what you said in a terrifying kind of way. When when Krishna's asking us to like turn and run towards the mess and engage, and I don't like that part. I don't like that part at all. I like to like dig in my heels and kind of go the other way. And yesterday we were talking about when that is kind of like a release as opposed to repression, and how releasing the issue is good. But if your mind is constantly, like you said, engaging in all the follow-ups and the fantasy conversations and the imaginary retorts and all of these things, it turns into repression rather than releasing, because we have not actually released whatever it is. We've just shoved it way, way down. And this idea of being a pretender comes to us even at a young age. This, fake it till you make it, like you said, when you've got this such a good child means that they don't inconvenience you. It has nothing to do with
Yeah,
the actual child themselves and everything to do with the fact that this child is good because it does not inconvenience you. And that was definitely that was a huge one. The ways that we decide what is good or bad, and usually it is based on how we're feeling, and never based on the other person's experiences.
that's a really great point. How we judge other people's character is often about how they make us feel. you know, such a good little boy. You never complain. What actually it's like, okay, well, I'm learning now to suppress my feelings and not say anything negative ever. That was one of my follow-ups was, well, one of my follow-ups was personal reflections on discovering navigating our natures. Like if they're, aspects of in our life where we realized there was something about ourselves that we were running away from or trying to change or thought we needed to change, or just, what does it look like, what has it looked like for us to be on this journey to discover and navigate and embrace and accept our own nature. um and that was a question. And then you mentioned that it's hard to navigate nature versus nurture when certain things are applauded in spiritual circles, such as renunciation or oppressing your diet or sacrificing your needs for the greater good, etc., being humble, etc. And so we sometimes learn to stuff it and to hide parts of ourselves. We learn to hide parts of ourselves because um we're trying to get the external validation, and then we plotted for that, and then we think, oh, that must be a good thing. Must be a good thing to hide certain parts of myself because that's what makes me a good yogi or a good devotee or a good citizen or whatever it might be. So you got any experience with that?
I mean, even I was talking about that yesterday, like my renunciation. But sometimes those things that we do get applauded for can turn toxic. And I really love that Krishna is always stressing balance. He's like, don't go too extreme either way. Uh, don't go too extreme into the renunciation. Don't go so extreme that you get completely entangled, but have a healthy level of attachment. And it's so interesting that Krishna is speaking about being detached, but in every purport, Srila Prabhupada is stressing the fact that, okay, Krishna is speaking about being detached, but in the right way, in a more balanced, detached healthily. And I think that that is such an a kind of a difficult tightrope to walk and a balance to come to, because like I was saying yesterday, and like we said just now, we can be applauded for certain things. How quiet we are, how renounced we are, how humble we are. But have we been humble? And tolerating is definitely an austerity and something that does become applauded. But once it starts to become to our own detriment, we have to find those safe spaces, try and carve out those safe spaces, maybe even try and make those safe spaces where we can talk about what's going on with us. Um, and it might not, definitely not have to be with everybody. Sometimes it might not even have to be with the person who's wronged you. But to be able to have those safe spaces where we can not simply repress what's happening, I think would be huge. Um, I think that's why these sanghas exist and why so many people come and are listening to podcasts and are trying to find these tribes and these sanghas, because everyone is looking for a safe space to not have to suppress and repress and all of the things that they're feeling. And they're looking for somebody else who's gonna somehow miraculously feel just like them.
Yeah. You mentioned yesterday also there was something really beautiful that we all have a sense, or we all owe it to ourselves to pay attention to what's not working. And I think that sometimes in our spiritual lives, we forget to ask the question of, like, what's my goal? Why am I doing this? And so we get so much caught up in the sense of I have to do this, that, and the other. When at the end of the day, it's like this ultimately, and I mean this in a good way. Like, this is for me. Like this is for you. And I think Krishna is pointing this out to Arjuna in a mindset of like, I'm just looking, I just feel like Krishna at a certain point was just like, I'm just looking out for your own happiness, man. Like, I'm just looking out for you. And I'm not telling you like, this is what you should do and this is what you shouldn't do. I'm just letting you know, like, if you turn about face and run away, like, it's not going to serve you. Like, you're not going to find what you're looking for out there. Like, you're not going to be at peace. You're not going to feel fulfillment. You're going to feel regret. You're going to feel you're still that emptiness that you're trying to run away from, that fear that you're trying to escape. Um, it's going to follow you. until you face it. And I think that for us, sometimes in spiritual life, we owe it to ourselves of like, what's really driving me? Am I still being motivated by a desire to fit in? Am I still being motivated by a sense of having somebody else tell me that I'm okay? Am I still being driven by a fear of rejection, or a fear of failure, or a fear of being cast aside and being bad, etc.? Am I paying attention to how something feels inside of me? And so I think that when we lose sense of that, then we just get swept up in this whole game of like, what gets applauded, what is the knee jerk reaction in me that's pushing me towards something, this, that, and the other, without being, I think patient is a good word, patient to like give my, and I think that's what Krishna is urging Arjuna a bit of like, don't respond to the impulse. Don't respond to the impulse. Give yourself a little time to like sit with the discomfort and allow yourself to make a more informed decision about where to go. And I think that sometimes, like whenever, especially, I mean, we live in a world of just overwhelming amounts of feedback about our lives constantly, you know, whether you're on social media or not. It's like we've just gotten used to this culture of just everyone, all of a sudden, everyone's opinion matters. And everybody has something to say about everything. And everyone's got a voice and a platform to say it. I was listening to somehow I was scrolling through something, and I was looking at um an old interview of like a sports star from like 20 years plus years ago. And the interview was like, so and so made a comment about you in an interview, and I'm wondering if you had any response to that. And I'm thinking, like, that's how it used to be. Like, if someone would have to go onto a televised interview and make a statement about you, and then you'd have to wait until somebody else invited you onto a televised interview to let them know what you thought about what they said. That was just all on Twitter, you know and there, you don't have to wait for anybody. You can make an unsolicited remark about anybody's life, and you can immediately make a response that everybody can see, and it's just going back and forth in the Twitter wars, or wherever it may be. And so I think that we get used to just responding immediately. Somebody said something, okay, I need to change, or I need to adjust it. Arjuna was in that. Okay, I got this discomfort. Let me completely change this whole course of action. Like we've thought about this. Like Arjuna, Krishna's like, we've been through this. Like this whole battle that we're facing right now. Like this isn't just like we didn't just last night decide like let's go for it. It's like this has been like I've tried negotiations. I've tried to talk people out of this. I've tried this, that, the other reason. Like we've gone through so much. You were in 14 years of exile, 13, 14, was it 14? Get my 13, 13 years of exile. And it's just like, this is not new. Like we've been preparing for this. Don't let like a little feeling or discomfort or listening to Duryodhan's words on the other side, like throw you off course. Like don't respond to impulses. Remind yourself what you're doing and why, and give yourself a little space to hold that discomfort so that you could work through it rather than be uh dissuade. Is that a good word? Dissuade, moved, pushed aside by it.
Absolutely. And I really, you know me, I love the context. And
I know you, and I love your context.
and this even becomes more to the point, right? We've been talking about when these things are applauded. Here Arjuna is saying, but if I do what seems comfortable, if I back away from all of this, everyone will applaud me. If I go through with what you're asking me, everyone's going to condemn me. I feel like I'm going to be completely left alone and deserted. Everything that I've worked for in the way of happiness, this seems to fly in the face of all of that. This seems to go against every single thing that I've worked for my happiness, my internal happiness, my emotional happiness. Like he's like, he says even before, like, what, I wouldn't even want this kingdom if it comes at this price. This material happiness, what is it going to do for me? In the end, I'm looking at what's going to be applauded, and not only will this make me feel more comfortable in a moral high ground, but everybody else says it'll be important too. And Krishna is hitting him with the hard truth. He's like, look, everybody else might be satisfied, and you're going to sacrifice your soul. You will not be happy. And that's a hard truth to swallow.
Hard pills to swallow. I think so, definitely. And I think again that goes back to reaffirming our purpose, which is what Krishna is asking Arjuna to do. Like, it's a hard pill to swallow, but it's even a harder pill to not swallow. You know, I know it feels like a hard pill to swallow, but it's even harder to not swallow. And I know you're just like, I'm not going to eat that. And it's like, yeah, I know, but to not take this pill, to not swallow this pill, is like, it's actually a lot worse. It's actually way worse. And so, Krishna's encouraging Arjuna for that. There's a couple other little follow-up questions here, but I feel like Kishore, some of them were brought up by Kishore, and
Although I think one last point I will say is that there's such an emphasis on the waiting. And
waiting.
Krishna is so, even in so many of his pastimes, he's about that. Like there's a pause, there's a waiting, which they say, outside my window for a while you were talking, it was like they were cutting the grass, right? It was really loud. And I was like, oh, it's okay, they'll be done in a minute. Sounds like they're just like cutting the grass. Now they're jackhammering. I have no idea.
Yeah, it's like, that's not a lawnmower. That's like a jackhammer.
I have no idea what they're doing. I've got no idea. But we're gonna hope for the best. But there's such an emphasis on the waiting within all of Krishna's pastimes, and life is short and simultaneously long at the same time. We have this idea, life is short, so I just have to say all the things and do all the things and immediately respond and do all this stuff. And Krishna's like, yes, life is short. Now take a moment and pause. Pause. And he is so much like that. And so much of his, so many, even him being born, there's a prophecy years before Krishna advents. And then everybody waits for years. We just sit and we wait. Sit with that. It's uncomfortable. His parents were in a jail cell. People were being like, they were going through all kinds of torture. People were just being mentally harassed and physically harassed and emotionally harassed. Krishna's like, wait a minute, everybody just sit with that. I'm like, sit with it? What are we supposed to do while we sit with it?
Yeah.
We're supposed to have faith. And I read something yesterday that really it resonated so much. And they were saying, don't be afraid not to have all the answers. When you're going through the dark night of the soul in the tunnel, don't be afraid that you don't have all the answers. And don't be in a rush to have all the answers. Sometimes it's okay to not know what to do. And sometimes it's okay to pause and sit with those feelings. And so I really, really like that reminder that, and because I'm all about that, I'm like, sometimes we just all need to pause, to sit for a second. Everybody sit with their feelings before we say, do, react in a way that we will all regret.
The years are short, but the days are long. So time on a macro scale seems to go by really quickly, but the moments, the days seems long. It was a long day, but like the years are very short. Like all of a sudden it's like, wait, what? Well, it's Christmas again? It's winter again. How did 5 years go by? My dog's 3 years old. How did that happen? How old is Nundi?
She's going to be 12 at the end of January.
12. It's going to be 12 at the end of January. Like, how did that happen? Days are short. The days are long, but the years are short. And so I love that you're mentioning about the pause. Some of the comments in the chat, we can be very impatient. We're material. trying to have the spirit soul unveil and take over. That's the sit with the uncomfortable that I run from, but end up having to deal with eventually. It would be better if I would have just done it to begin with. And that, my friends, is, I think, the ultimate point that Krishna, you can run away from your particular circumstances, but you can't run away from the internal growth that you are meant for, which that circumstance is calling you to address. And maybe you're not ready for something in the moment. Maybe you need some more skills, or maybe you need some more support. Maybe you need some time. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we're all on the track back home, back to Godhead. We're all on the track back home, back to transcendence. Um, and you know, it's now or later. And so Krishna is encouraging us to take the opportunities we have seriously. So with that in mind, we're going to turn it over to our wrap it up Acharya, Kimberly, who's going to give us some wrap it up takeaway points to carry us into our weekend. What you got, Kimberly?
Thank you. Today we are taking away to run towards the mess, detach healthily, pause and be patient with responding to impulses, and that Krishna is looking out for our happiness.
Thank you for using my word healthily. Chita, you got a closing word?
Jackhammers, you know.
Jackhammers.
It's good. Sometimes we give ourselves that room to kind of reflect and be still and quiet for a moment. And then sometimes Krishna places us in that moment. So I feel like I'm being placed in that moment. It's my job now to reflect. I bet you after this podcast is done, they will stop.
It's completely stopped. I was talking with a friend yesterday morning, a little later after the podcast, and he lives in Lower Manhattan. And it was the same thing. There were like jackhammers going on. I was like, "How you doing?" I was like, "I'm doing okay. There's some construction going on outside my building, and like jackhammers, and hopefully it'll be done soon." And I'm just thinking like, but he was like, "Yeah, it's just like New York City living, it just happens." And I'm just thinking like, there's just jackhammers everywhere. Whether you're in Lower Manhattan, whether you're in Queens, it's just like, it just feels like they're just like at the beginning of the day, they all huddle up in an office somewhere in a big warehouse and like, disperse, go forth and make noise in New York City. And they just send all the jackhammers out all over the city. It's like, what are we all jackhammering? Aren't we all done? Haven't we built everything by now? What are we still building? Like, we just tear up the street. So anyways, God bless. Thank you guys all so much for being with us. Thank you for being part of this family. We are off for the weekend. Today's Friday, so we're off for the weekend, and we will be back on Monday. Take care, be well. Thank you, and bye-bye.